Today I've got a 2-for-1 video for you, so I'm going to talk about not only how crazy 2022 was, but also what I do at the end of the year to kind of get my business in order and back on track from being derailed most of the time. And stay tuned to the end because I have an exciting announcement, especially if you are thinking about starting an Etsy shop and haven't done so yet. What I do at the end of the year for the business is pretty similar to what I do at the end of every month, just with more taxes. The first thing I usually do at the end of the year is start catching up on my QuickBooks. This year, thankfully, I thought about this in October, so I didn't have to catch up for the entire year like I usually do. Most things in QuickBooks, especially if you have it synced with your Etsy shop, are going to go automatically and be categorized. But I always double check those because the first year that I did my taxes as a self-employed person, that was all a mess. Like, it had double counted my income. Like, I almost paid taxes for double the amount of income I was supposed to have. Thankfully, I caught that before I actually sent that check to the IRS because I do not want to be paying more than I have to. I don't know if that was something I did. Maybe I didn't know that it would automatically categorize things from Etsy. So right now, when I get a sale on Etsy, it basically looks like the Etsy payment account as far as QuickBooks. So QuickBooks doesn't just take like the net amount. It'll show the total sale and what the customer actually paid, and then it'll take out the shipping, and then it'll take out the taxes and the fees and everything separately. So I guess at that time it was taking my income, and then also when it was counting it as income again when it would send me the check every week to my checking account, which is supposed to count that as a transfer, not as another income. So I must have done something to mess that up. So if you are new to using QuickBooks, you might want to check on that. Make sure you don't do something to override it. That's wrong. So I'll go through and make sure all those transactions are categorized in the correct category. And I'll make sure, especially if it's something like Amazon, I will make sure that that was either a personal or a business, because I use the same Amazon account but different cards. But sometimes something gets charged to the wrong card on accident. And as you're doing that, you can see in real time the change to how much QuickBooks estimates that you should pay in taxes. And with each click, I am either happy or disappointed because it's just going up and down the whole time. So once my QuickBooks is caught up, then I will go check my budget, make sure that I have enough to pay this tax bill that's coming up. And yes, you should pay your taxes quarterly, but no, I am not an accountant. It is very tricky to figure out the quarterly taxes. If your income is not consistent, QuickBooks kind of helps with that, but also like a few times I have paid way more than I should because I maybe didn't have as many deductions at the beginning of the year as I do at the end of the year, because most of my sales happen like in the middle of the year. So it's just a big old mess. Since it's still December, I can't like go in and pay my taxes yet, really, because I don't know how much it's going to be by the end of December. And also I can't like file for the year until my husband's W-2 and stuff comes. So while I'm looking at my budget to make sure I can pay the tax bill, I will look at what I spent throughout the year for the different categories I have. So like how much I spent on materials, how much I spent on my software stuff like Shopify, ShipStation, whatever else I use. And I'll see if there's anything that looks out of place or that maybe I spent a little bit too much money on. So I had subscribed to a membership thing that I was learning like some techniques that would help me, but then I realized I wasn't using it very much and I canceled it, and it saved me like $14 a month, which does add up over the years. So I canceled that. Then once the financial stuff is done, I will move on to inventory. I generally keep a good record of what I have and update it almost daily, but at the end of the year I will go through and do a pretty quick recount just to make sure I put in everything right and didn't have any typos or whatever the case is, and I don't end up overselling or something later on. And as far as inventory goes, this was one of the most difficult things, I think, to find information about, like exactly how to do that as far as taxes go. But I did look at the IRS website earlier, and you're like kind of not supposed to classify your products as like materials and supplies, but you can in some situations, so I would look into that and get that information from somebody that knows what they're talking about, because as far as this realm goes, I do not know what I'm talking about. I mean, I do at least enough to get by for myself, but I do not want to be giving that kind of advice to somebody else, because that's a lot of risk. I also will track the items that I have sold in my spreadsheet. So I will go in and summarize that for the year. I keep that monthly, but then I'll go and look, you know, at the entire year versus previous years and see what sold the best, what sold the worst, or what sells better at different times of the year. And that just helps me to figure out new listings to make or new ones to add in certain categories, or maybe ones that I need to clearance out and get rid of because they're not selling very well. And then similar to at the end of the month, I will go into my Etsy analytics, my Shopify analytics, and look at those to see trends or anything, especially like looking at Etsy ads, seeing how much I spent. Again, I do this every month as well, but it helps to get a bigger picture of the whole year versus just a month at a time. I also track my social media growth, so I know this is not like a definite indicator of your success, because I have gotten a lot of engagement and follows like on Instagram, for example, but that did not translate into sales. But I'll take that information and look for trends as well, so maybe one platform is doing a lot better than the other ones. I haven't done this yet since December is not over, but I am almost certain that it is TikTok, unfortunately. And I'll take all of that information that I just talked about gathering and use that to formulate my goals and my game plan for the next year. So new products to launch, where I should focus my time and energy as far as like social media and marketing. And if I spent too much money on supplies, I need to slow down. And something that I want to do next year, I have started this over the past few months and I've been writing it in my planner, but I haven't been like actually tracking it. I would like to keep track of how much actual time I spend doing things, because I can often feel like I'm working a lot, like I'm in this room a lot, but I'm not really getting anything done. And through tracking my time for the past few months or so, some weeks I might work 10 hours for the whole week, which is not actually good. Like, wow, you're full-time and you only work 10 hours. Like, yeah, that's a problem because, you know, even if I'm up here for more than 10 hours, I have some personal things that I'm doing up here as well that are kind of business related, but I'll talk about a little more at the end of this video. But I'm like, wow, my sales are down. And then I look at how much time I've spent, because that time includes making products, but also marketing and like posting on social media and stuff. So if I only spend 10 hours, that's not much that's getting done. The heater just kicked on. It's cold this weekend. I'm in Georgia and it's still freaking cold, so sorry, you can hear that, I'm sure. So just a recap of things that happened this year. Like I said, it was crazy, like being sarcastic, but also it kind of was. We moved into this house in January because we just got married last December. It was a bit of a rough start as far as the business goes. The transition was a bit difficult. Like, it was good because I have literally like the whole second floor of this house for my business, and previously I only had one room. I guess maybe I underestimated like how much time it takes, you know, keeping up a house and being married and having like responsibilities, you know. So this past April was the worst month I have had since I went full-time, like as far as dollar amount sales. Like the month I went full-time was a bit lower than that, but then this past April, awful. I don't quite know why. I might have to go back and look and see like kind of what happened, because I really don't know. You know, is that when Etsy... Wait a minute. I knew it. Okay. So April was when Etsy changed the fees and everybody was boycotting. And also I think that was when the stuff started happening with the war that's going on. So yeah, that is probably why. And partly also because I opened my Shopify in May, and I was spending a lot of time getting ready for that instead of trying to focus on Etsy. So for both April and May this year, I don't usually talk about like exactly how much I made, but both of those months, not combined, but just separately, I made less than $1,000, which you might be like, oh, that's great. I don't make that much money, but when this is your full-time job, not great. And honestly, that is more difficult with a partner involved. Like, my husband knew that the business was going to be volatile like that, but he didn't quite understand. Sometimes he might have to pitch in more than usual. So yeah, that was not fun, and I don't think he's had to do that since then. So we've been okay so far after that. So I reopened my Shopify at the end of May. I think May the 31st or something like that, maybe toward the end. I can't remember the exact date. And very, very shortly after that, I had that viral video on TikTok, and June was the highest amount of sales by a long shot. So I made 5-figure sales for the first time ever. So I went from less than $1,000 to over $10,000 within a 2-month time frame. And I had frequent anxiety attacks almost daily for about 2 months. And through that, I was able to invest in new storage for my inventory and also 2 new industrial sewing machines. Well, one new one and one that's new to me. And after the rush from the viral video, sales dipped significantly after that. Although they are higher than before, nowhere near the, I wouldn't have been able to sustain that level of sales I was doing at the time. As of early December, I surpassed last year's sales on Etsy only, which I was kind of getting nervous because it was really close for a while, and I finally surpassed it earlier this month. But I had the addition of Shopify that I didn't have last year, and with that, most of my sales from the viral video were on Shopify, thankfully, because that would have been a lot of money in Etsy fees. But I effectively doubled last year's sales with the addition of Shopify. No wonder I owe so much in taxes this year, because I didn't realize it was that close, like almost double, until I looked at it for the whole year. I was like, yeah. And I also pretty recently surpassed 3,000 subscribers here on YouTube, which was surprisingly fast since, you're supposed to be consistent and whatnot. And I didn't post for at least half of the year, I think. And as of the last few months, I have been getting consistent payouts from AdSense. And previously it had only been every 2 to 3 months because they have a $100 threshold. So I have been hitting that threshold every month, which is a great bonus. So that's enough to pay one of my bills, which is nice, but I don't use it for that at this moment. I'm glad that I thought beforehand to put some money back for taxes, because essentially all of that is going to be income. I don't have that many deductions as far as this goes. I might buy some new equipment. I need a new tripod because this one is as tall as it goes, and I would like to have a taller one. And I use that to pay for ConvertKit, which is the email service that I use for Type 9 Studio, and also for SiteGround, who hosts my blog that I am still trying to work on, but I haven't worked on it much at all, so I have to pay for that regardless. So all in all, a lot of the year sucked, or at least seemed like it did, but that's why it's important to stop and reflect, because you'll see that it wasn't as bad as you thought. Now on to 2023. So I have had a lot of ideas and a lot of fleeting ideas for what I'm going to do next year. One that I am going to share now, because I don't think this is going to happen the way that my original plan was, but I had thought about secretly, or quietly, not really secretly, opening a second Etsy shop using advice that I have learned and that I share on this channel, and seeing how it goes, and kind of documenting that and then releasing that at a later date, as archival footage, something like that, like a documentary style. But to do it the way I want to, I don't know. I definitely don't have the money up front to do that. I was planning on saving up like my AdSense from this channel to start that, like maybe once I get $500 or something like set aside, then I would do that, but it's not quite enough to really get going the way that I would like to. And just logistically, because it was going to be some kind of like a craft supply shop instead of something handmade, so it would take less of my time not having to make all of the stuff. And then comes the issue of, okay, if that does take off like I expect it to, I don't know where I'm gonna put stuff like that, so I don't know. This may come into play in a different way. But essentially, at this point, I'm kind of getting bored of my shop, which is why I've moved to working on Type 9 Studio a bit more. And I've taken an interest in, which I don't know why it's taken me this long. Like, I've always liked fashion design, even though I'm not great at like styling an outfit and stuff like that, but I like the construction aspect, like tailoring basically, and I like old, like antique and vintage things, and I never put them together until like maybe a few months ago. And in a lot of ways, the techniques that were used before the scale of mass production that we know now started, a lot of those techniques were far superior. And like the materials used, like before polyester was invented, clothing was great, okay? And especially since my shop now is focused on sustainability, and I am looking at getting more sustainable with my shop now, but it's all coming together. I'm also very cautious about monetizing my hobbies, so I am not sure how I am proceeding from here. I'm kind of just taking some time to think about it and practice, get better at it at least, you know, if not for my own benefit. And then if I want to make and sell clothes in addition to what I normally do, I don't know if I would do that like in the same shop, or if I make a new shop, or if I would just do it like on the side. Like I know some people that do that and just sell it on Mercari or something. I have a lot of big ideas, but I often don't fully explore them or like figure out the implications of trying to implement those ideas. So I'm working on that now with this idea, because it is not essential at this time to be pursuing a different venture, because now I'm making a bit more money from this channel and the business is okay. Like this month, sales have been pretty crappy, honestly, but when I started my shop, I look back at the stuff that I made first and realized that it was pretty bad as far as like the stitching. Like I didn't have the tension set right on my machine, so the threads looked really weird and I didn't know they looked weird. So I would like to mitigate that part and make a bunch of stuff like for myself, and you know, make sure that I am good with the techniques of dressmaking and tailoring and that kind of stuff before I start making it for other people. Or I could go the route of starting yet another YouTube channel because this is like my second serious channel. I have, I think, 3 total, but one I actually know 4, because I'll get like this idea to try to share my hobby but also like monetize it with the AdSense. At least this one has worked out. This is the only channel I've ever made money from. Like I think when I got monetized with this channel, I had $70 from a previous channel that I was just sitting there for years because I never reached the $100 to get a payout. So that is something that I will be considering, and I also need to reorganize this room and make it a little bit more conducive to clothing design, because I need like bigger tables, and this table here that I cut stuff on is not big enough for bigger, like wider fabric. So I suppose I'll keep you updated on what I decide to do with that. Speaking of starting a new Etsy shop, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I have I don't want to say this is a major announcement, but basically I am starting a sort of course on YouTube, and it is not a traditional course in the way that you would have to pay me and You know, I would give you like the videos. Like I'm just starting from the beginning. If you want to start an Etsy shop or are thinking of doing something similar, how you would do that. So I'm aptly naming it How to Start an Etsy Shop in 2023, which is going to be good for SEO for my purposes, but also just so you know, like if you want to tune into that, then you will be able to see all those in a specific playlist. That way you don't have to like bounce around from all my videos. You can just watch all of those. So right now I have 24 to 25 topics planned out for like between now and April. I think it's going to take me to get through all of them. So I'm going to do 3 episodes and then like a random filler to kind of give you and me a break. If you're not really interested in the beginner stuff, then you can watch the other ones. So the first episode of that is going to be posted on December 31st. I am going back to my normal schedule of Wednesday, Saturday. I have been just posting on Wednesdays because I haven't really had much time or energy to post, but these I can pre-film them and just breeze through. So if that sounds interesting, make sure you are subscribed, and if you want to join my email list, it's links.type9studio.com. I'll send an email maybe every week, maybe every 2 weeks about the videos for that week or 2 weeks, so in case you miss them in your YouTube feed or something. I would love to hear from you if you have any questions or any suggestions for topics for that. I'm not going to do them in any specific order, like beyond the first little bit like of opening, like figuring out what you want to sell and that kind of initial stuff, and then like after that it's going to be kind of just whatever I think fits together, because there's not really, like everybody's journey is different, so there's not really a linear pattern of like things that you need to know. And based on your suggestions or your questions, I might add more episodes to this. Anyways, that is it for me today. Like I said, if you have any questions, suggestions, anything else that I talked about, let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.